Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Thursday. Awesome show on tap for you today. We are almost to the weekend, and I've got a different way we're going to go at. We're going to go at this Michael Oher situation once again, but this show today is really about the media. And it's going to be an explanation of how devious, wicked, misleading, and just wrong the media is. When Donald Trump says the media is the enemy of the people, what we're witnessing in real time right now with Michael Oher is proof of that. The media is the king of racial division. The media, the mainstream, corporate media, social media are driving us apart. And so we're going to call today's show J School. I used to, years ago when I was at Fox Sports and the whole media system was lined up against me and trying to destroy me, and I had been fired from ESPN, I had gone back to Fox Sports, and there was all this pressure to not allow me to write. Now, here's someone that has put together a really decorated and famous sports writing career, and Jamie Horowitz, who was my boss at that time, and Fox Sports, they were committed to not allowing me to write, and that was because of the pressure from Deadspin and Deadspin editors and some threats they were making towards the people that oversaw me. And so FoxSports.com wouldn't allow me to write for them. No one wanted to be associated with my writing. It was too dangerous. At that time, there was a guy named Pete Velasteca, I think, was running FoxSports.com. He didn't particularly like me and had, participated in some lies about me and some misrepresentations about me as it related to my original stint with Fox Sports. And so no one wanted to be associated with me, but no one could deny that my writing is what made me famous. And so I just kept insisting, like, how you gonna bring me back over here to work at Fox Sports and do television and not allow me to write? Writing is my, superpower. That's what I'm famous for. And that's what drives me every day. And so they came up with a compromise of me doing a website that I think is still available on the internet. Let me check here. I just think if you go to j.school, j.school, J School. Come on. Let me see if I'm pretty sure this, it's still live. J.school. Don't put a .com after it. Don't put anything after it. So first thing you see is first thing that comes up for me is some piece I wrote about Steph Curry. But anyway, the thought behind J School was that it's a play off my name, Jason. It's a play off of journalism school. That's what they call journalism school, J School. And so it was intended as a play off my name and a play off of, I'm gonna show you what sports journalists should be doing. And that's what today is going to be about. J School. I'm going to take everybody to J School. I'm going to spend quite a bit of time here today walking you through mostly what was written yesterday about Michael Oher and his dispute with the Tuohy family and how the media has covered it and how dishonest the media has covered it. And because I think it's a clear example when you hear people say fake news and the media is the enemy of the people and the media is the number one divider of the people. I think there are still some people who don't fully understand what we're talking about. And that's what I love about being in the sports world and in a lane where everybody enjoys talking about sports. Everybody knows a little something about sports. It's more accessible. Not everybody follows politics or knows really anything about it or some of the other broader, more controversial issues. But through this sports lens, you can explain and understand everything that's going on in the larger society. And so I just want to walk you through some of the things that have been written, some of the things that have been said by top journalists, and try to paint the picture and get you to understand how the media manipulates us by what they do right and by what they omit. And so there's about a dozen of these things that I'm going to walk us through and just one by one, and I'm just going to point out how we're being manipulated. And we're going to start with a story in the New York Post from yesterday. It's written by Christian Arnold. I think it's about Michael Oher family had relationship after movie, according to an ex-teammate. And that's Dominique Foxworth from ESPN talking. He was on Dan Le Batard's podcast talking about Michael Oher. I believe that Foxworth and Oher were teammates with the Baltimore Ravens. And nothing wrong with that story. And Dominique Foxworth is worthy of being quoted. He was a teammate. He's in the media. He has some insight in terms of what he saw, I believe, in 2009 as it relates to Michael Oher's relationship with the Tuohy family. But I just want to read you just this small, subtle manipulation in this story. That, again, this is written yesterday, Wednesday. The passage is, Oher claimed in a shocking lawsuit filed on Monday that the Oher family had him, that's miswritten on their part, that the Tuohy family had him enter into a conservatorship while making him think they had adopted him. Oher, who played 8 years in the NFL, said that he only learned of the conservatorship in February of this year. So they have the typo in the story, Christian Arnold. What Oher claimed in a shocking lawsuit filed on Monday that the Tuohy family had him enter into a conservatorship. The guy's writing this on Wednesday. Monday or Tuesday, everybody knew or should have known. It's one of the first things I wrote and talked about, I believe, on Tuesday about this, was that in 2011, Michael Oher wrote a book, I Beat the Odds, where he states in 2011, hey, I entered into a conservatorship with them. You know, I thought it was the same as an adoption, but it was a conservatorship. Again, there's no mystery about this conservatorship. Michael Oher in 2011 wrote about it. I talked about how in the movie and in Michael Lewis's book, The Blind Side, they never call it an adoption. They call it legal guardianship. In the movie, we played those clips, or we talked about those clips, and I rewatched the movie. There's no reason for the New York Post to try to pretend yesterday that anyone thought that Michael Oher just woke up in February of 23 and said, oh, I'm in a conservatorship. This is wrong. The man wrote it in his own book in 2011. This is a small, subtle misdirection to demonize the Tuohy family and just enter misinformation. This is the New York Post. Again, I'm not playing favorites, and I know they're allegedly, they're owned by Rupert Murdoch, and allegedly they're more conservative. This isn't a right or left thing. This is a dishonest media thing, and the games that they play constantly with the American public, and how facts don't matter, and how things are never corrected by the media. They just keep piling lies on top of lies on top of lies, as long as it's promoting division and conflict. They want to emotionally trigger us every chance they get. They want to racially divide us every chance they get. That's why the media, and I'm We're going to stay on this for a while. The enemy of the people. When you start telling these tiny lies, they add up into a bigger lie, and they continue. They fuel the kind of conflict, the kind of racial conflict that we have constantly here in America. Now, just in the interest of fairness and in the interest of me being transparent, we're going to move on to a Washington Post story that's going to point out something that I need to clarify, but also something that I think they need to clarify. Ben Strauss and Molly Hensley Clancy wrote a piece, about Michael Lewis's blindside lawsuit. It's in the Washington Post yesterday. Let me get you the headline here. Author Michael Lewis says only Hollywood cashed in on blindside success. This is a story in the Washington Post, and there's several quotes in here that I want to go over, but I want to start with one that I need to clarify. So this article says at some point, Oher, who is black, was growing up poor in Memphis when he was taken in by Sean and Leanne Tuohy, a wealthy white couple. Lewis, the author of Moneyball and The Big Short and other nonfiction bestsellers, heard the story from Sean Tuohy, a childhood friend, and turned it into the 2006 book that chronicled Oher's rise to football acclaim and the booming market for NFL linemen capable of protecting quarterbacks' backs, their blind sides. And so earlier this week, I believe yesterday or Tuesday, I stated like, hey, everybody's mischaracterizing the book, The Blind Side. And when I initially read this, I thought, oh, yesterday, here they are mischaracterizing The Blind Side yet again. And it is a slight mischaracterization, but it's not a full mischaracterization like I said previously. The book is about Michael Oher's rise. It also is about the booming market for NFL linemen and their left tackles. The book starts with, and the book's idea came from Lawrence Taylor and the hit he had on Joe Theismann, and how Joe Gibbs and the Washington Redskins and an offensive tackle, Joe Jacoby, that the Redskins had at that time, and how the whole money market for offensive linemen in the NFL changed because of Lawrence Taylor. That is where the book starts. But they do use Michael Oher's rise as the hook, the human interest hook. The book is about the NFL. The book is about the evolution of the NFL. And the hook is the Michael Oher story. That is accurate. I need to clarify what I said previously and the indication I gave previously that, hey, it wasn't explicitly a book. I think I said this yesterday. It wasn't explicitly a book solely about Michael Oher. I was mistaken and have since, I'm about halfway through rereading The Blind Side because I read it previously. I'm rereading it again to refresh my memory. Just no different than I read Michael Oher's book, I Beat the Odds, no different than I went and rewatched the movie The Blind Side. Now I'm rereading the book The Blind Side to get a full understanding of that and refresh my memory. The book came out in 2006. Just want to clarify that issue. Point number 3, the third thing. This is in the same story by Ben Strauss and Molly Hensley Clancy in the Washington Post. According to Lewis, 20th Century Fox, as it was known then, paid $250,000 for the option to make The Blind Side a movie, which he split 50-50 with the Tuohy family. The Tuohys have said they split their share evenly, including with Oher. After taxes and agent fees, Lewis said his half was around $70,000. Fox, however, never made the movie. According to Lewis, the studio had thought Julia Roberts would be interested in the film, but she wasn't. Instead, Michael Lewis said Alcon, a small production company, backed by the Tuohys' neighbor, FedEx CEO Fred Smith, stepped in. Instead of paying the actors large salaries, Lewis said they were offered a share of the profits. Lewis said his deal provided him a share of the movie's net profits too. Warner Brothers distributed the movie. This is a very important graph. This is a very important part of the story that no one seems to talk about. In the Washington Post, in their retelling of the Michael Lewis story or getting an interview with Michael Lewis, they don't point this out. This is critical here in the understanding of what Michael Oher is trying to do and how the media and people on social media are manipulating all of this. This is the key. This is the key part of this. Very critical. Keep it. Michael Lewis is a childhood friend of Sean Tuohy, the writer of the book. So the book would not have gotten written. The original book in 2006 would not have gotten written had not Michael Lewis been friends with Sean Tuohy, this evil dad that, manipulated Michael Oher and just ripped him off for money. If not for his childhood friendship and relationship with Michael Lewis, there's no book. There's no movie if Sean Tuohy's next door neighbor isn't Fred Smith. Michael Oher doesn't realize, the media won't point out, social media so hooked on the little race bait game won't tell you. There would be no book and there would be no movie without Sean Tuohy. Michael Oher is sitting around telling everybody, feeling sorry for himself, demonizing the Tuohy family. Oh, they ripped me off. I signed a conservatorship. I didn't get enough money for The Blind Side. The whole thing is about me, and I got ripped off. I didn't make any money off of it. The first lie is, and reading the book makes this clear. Yes, Michael Oher is the hook, but the book isn't solely about Michael Oher. It's just as much about Sean Tuohy, Leanne Tuohy, Tom Lemming. Again, some of you won't recognize the name Tom Lemming, but Tom Lemming basically invented the reporting on high school football recruiting in the 1970s. There would be no rivals.com. There would be no 247sports.com or whatever. There wouldn't be any ESPN's 300. There would be none of that without Tom Lemming. And he's a part of the Michael Oher story. But Michael Oher has no idea that when the Tuohys took him in, when they connected with him at 16 years old, when they decided to start helping him, he started benefiting from their wealth privilege. He started benefiting from being friends with Sean Tuohy, a wealthy man with powerful friends, and at that time, 43 years worth of relationships that he leaned into that got them included in Michael Lewis's book and got his next door neighbor to finance the movie. But it's all Michael Oher. And oh my God, Michael Oher has been just ripped off and exploited here. No book, no movie without Sean Tuohy. There's a myth out here that, oh my God, this book couldn't have happened. There's no other story like Michael Oher. He's the only one. The sports world is littered with stories like Michael Oher. Abandoned young black men taken in by Christians, many of them white, and provided the help they need to get through academic. Patrick Willis, a far better NFL player than Michael Oher. Patrick Willis, linebacker for the 49ers, great player, awesome player. I mean, seriously, not quite Ray Lewis, but as a middle linebacker, not much, it doesn't get much better than Patrick Willis. Patrick Willis also played at Ole Miss, adopted by or taken in by a white family. Similar background as Michael Oher. Michael Oher thinks he's the only one. Go read the story about Jimmy Butler, the NBA player. Colin Kaepernick. There's all kinds of stories like this. Let's quit pretending that, this entire story is just about Michael Oher. The story's about me. I should have made all the money. The deal should have been cut in my favor. It's all me. And we have all these people in the media, yeah, it's all you. When the facts are sitting right in our face. The Washington Post is reporting it, but they're not pointing you to the logical conclusion that you should reach, because that's the game the media plays. They want you irate. They want you to think white and black people are enemies. They want you to think that every interaction between white and black people has some kind of racial overtone to it. They refuse to tell you the truth. No movie without Sean Tuohy. No book without Sean Tuohy. No tutor without Sean Tuohy. If you go reread The Blind Side, don't just rely on the movie. Sean Tuohy was already helping other black kids at Briarcrest Christian High School. That was his thing. That's what he was into. The book tells the story. The book tells the story about Sean Tuohy's wife. This is just telling. She was raised to be a racist, Leanne Tuohy. And that when they got married, her father was a bigot. And Leanne actually was in the first 1973, I think, graduating class for Briarcrest. And when they started busing kids in Tennessee, when they started busing black kids and integrating schools in Tennessee, her racist father pulled her out of public school and put her in Briarcrest. She was part of their first graduating class. The Blind Side book tells the story. When she walked down the aisle of her wedding, this is a fact. This is reported in the book. Sean Tuohy had all these black friends. He was a basketball player at Ole Miss. He didn't see color. He just had all kinds of friends, and they were all at the wedding. And this woman's walking down the aisle, and her father says to her, "Why are all these at this wedding?" She marries Sean Tuohy and admits, like, my husband don't see color. He loves black people. He loves everybody. And she changed and pivoted away from her father's teaching and adopted her husband's worldview. And that was at the foundation of their connection and her connection with Michael Oher. This is what great male leadership looks like. When a man takes charge of his family and his wife and disciples that wife and family in his biblical worldview. This woman was raised by a racist father by her own admission, And she adopted her husband's worldview because her husband, he becomes rich. He's funded and helped develop some church in Tennessee. I think it's called Grace Church or whatever. The media is lying to you. And they're denying you the truth and turning a great story about Christian, male, masculine leadership and what it can do and the power that it has to change people's hearts, to change people's worldview. The media is our enemy. They lie to us repeatedly. They mislead us constantly. They promote racial division in all kinds of little ways. The facts are sitting right there for them to point out, and they ignore the facts and choose division. Here's the next little excerpt from the same Washington Post story. But the nature of the relationship between Oher and the Tuohy family, highlighted by questions of paternalism, racial dynamics, and who profits off someone's life story, was thrust back into the spotlight this week by Oher's legal filing. I'm circling back on a point I've already made, but what this graph points out is like, why is Ben Strauss, Molly Hensley Clancy, and the Washington Post, why are they lying? That who profits off of whose life story? As if this book and this story only revolves around one person. It doesn't. Go read the book and then just think about life in general. Jason Whitlock's life does not revolve around just me. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm a part of it, a big part of it. But any success that I have had in this world has come at the assistance of all kinds of other people. It's not just my life story. My life story is a collection of the stories of all the different people who have helped me along the way. These liberals love to talk about a village and how we all got to do it together. And let's embrace socialism and we all do it together and we live as a collective. Oh, but when it comes to Michael Oher, this whole thing it's all Michael Oher. It's not the Tuohys whose best friend or Sean Tuohy's friend growing up wrote the book. It's nothing to do with the next door neighbor who financed the movie. Has nothing to do with the Tuohys. It's all just about Michael Oher because he's the black guy. And he got exploited allegedly by a conservatorship. These are just obvious lies. It's an unsophisticated view of the world and how life operates. Maybe Ben Strauss, Molly Hensley Clancy, maybe they're just retarded. Maybe their editors are just retarded. Maybe they just don't have any understanding of how life works and how people get ahead. But to sit here and pretend like The Blind Side is solely about Michael Oher is a joke and a lie and an obvious tool being used to drive division. The media, enemy of the people. Enemy of the people. So, same story. Ben Strauss, Molly Hensley Clancy, and I'm going to spend a lot of time here. So before I read this next excerpt, because I'm going to spend a lot of time here, because we're about to get into this conservatorship deal, and it's going to take me some time to explain all that. So before I do all that, I want to tell you about a group that knows that we're in it together, Preborn. Preborn.com is part of our passion project here at Fearless. It's part of our worldview. It's about supporting life and understanding that life begins at conception inside the womb And we embrace that mindset here as fearless soldiers. And preborn not just embraces that mindset, they do the work. And that's why we support them financially. Preborn provides ultrasounds to expectant mothers who are considering abortion. Preborn provides that ultrasound, introduces that woman to the heartbeat of that baby and an image of that baby inside her womb, and that mother more than likely will choose life, and that's when preborn really comes in and supports that woman through the pregnancy and even after the child comes out of the womb. That's how our money is spent, paying for ultrasounds and helping the mother after the baby comes out of the womb. For just $28, you can sponsor an ultrasound. $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Whether you give $5 or $5,000, it all helps. All you have to do is hit pound 250, see the keyword baby, or give the way that I like to give, preborn.com/Jason, preborn.com/Jason. When you do give, let me know about it, please, because it warms my heart, it inspires me, keeps me soldiering on against this evil media that I keep talking about that keeps trying to divide us. Preborn's trying to bring us together. That's why I love working with them. That's why I love representing them. And that's why I'm encouraging you to support them. So let me return to this next excerpt from the Washington Post. This is yesterday. The nature of the conservatorship that Oher was placed under is not clear and somewhat unusual. Tennessee law reserves conservatorships for people with mental or physical disabilities who lack the capacity to make decisions for themselves, said Barbara Moss, an attorney in the state who is experienced in conservatorships. Moss then is quoted as saying, "You have to have a doctor say you have a mental or physical disability in whole or in part," end quote. From an outside legal perspective, she said the arrangement with Oher and the Tuohys was bizarre. Bizarre is in quotes. "I've never seen something like that happen," she said. "From what I know of Michael Oher, he wouldn't have qualified." Graph ends with Lewis said, this is Michael Lewis said, he believed the Tuohy family chose a conservatorship for Oher because the process was quicker than traditional adoption, and they were concerned about the NCAA investigating Oher's choice to attend the University of Mississippi, where the Tuohys were boosters. So, before quoting Michael Lewis, who knows the Tuohys and knows Michael Oher, and who reported on all this stuff and wrote about all this stuff in 2006, the Washington Post quotes an outsider who's speculating, who said, "From what I know of Michael Oher, he wouldn't have qualified." What does Barbara Moss know of Michael Oher? Nothing. She's a know-nothing with a title. And this is what they do. They put people with titles who know nothing and quote them pushing a narrative that the Washington Post is interested in. That's why you call a know-nothing with a title. So they'll say something that advances your agenda. This is dishonest. And it's dishonest on purpose to demonize the conservatorship. And so that's the big question everybody's been running around with for the past few days. And the conservatorship. Oh, why is he in a conservatorship? Oh, he's 37. Why is he in a conservatorship? And these people are stupid. And they're know-nothings. And they throw out common sense because everybody's chasing an agenda, a narrative. So let me walk you through why they may have chosen a conservatorship. And I want to be crystal clear here. I have not talked to the Tuohys. I'm just telling you from my life experience, common sense, having had a cousin come live with me for 2 years when he was just 14, when I was in Kansas City, and just all the different nuances of that situation and making sure you have all the paperwork so you can sign him into school. And so if he has to go to the hospital, but there's a multitude of reasons why he's in the conservatorship. And then people say, why is he still in the conservatorship? And that's the answer. That's the question I'm going to answer right now. And so the Washington Post, and as you see when I start quoting the New York Times, I start quoting any of these papers, they love to consult with professors and public intellectuals and people that can talk about theories. They have a theory on this, or, hey, I don't know anything about it, but this is what I think, and blah, blah, blah. They don't like quoting or even talking to people that just have common sense, that just have life experience. So why would, at 37, this conservatorship still be in place? Why did they seek a conservatorship at the outset? I'll take Michael Lewis and the Tuohys from what they've said publicly at their word. A lot of this had to do with the NCAA at the time. Here's what they're not saying, in my opinion. And here's what common sense tells me they're not saying, in my opinion. You get a conservatorship for someone who's 6'5", 300 some odd pounds, and is being recruited by all the top college football programs in the country. And all the experts are saying, like, oh boy, if this guy plays his cards right, he's going to go to the NFL and he's going to make millions of dollars. Our friend Michael Lewis is writing a book right now about the economics surrounded around people who fit Michael Oher's description. 6'5", 300 some odd pounds, extremely athletic, quick feet. Hey, Tom Lemming, this recruiting guru, says, hey, this kid could turn into something. All these coaches from Nick Saban to Houston Nutt to, they're all showing up. Whoever was Phil Fulmer, I think the coach at Tennessee at the time, they're all showing up and saying, hey, this kid, with his athleticism, and if we can get him into school, and if he, doesn't get in trouble, he might make millions of dollars. And there's a book that Michael Lewis is writing that's talking about the economics around left tackles. And so you know why you would get Michael Oher a conservatorship? Because Michael Oher has 11 siblings who all grew up like him. Michael Oher has a father who abandoned him, who could, depending on the situation, try to creep back into the picture. Or maybe he's dead, I don't know. Michael Oher has a mother who's addicted to crack cocaine, who birthed 11 kids. Most of these kids, according to Michael Oher's 2011 book, they don't know their father. And just like him, their mother would abandon them, leave them locked out of the house and disappear for 3 or 4 days at a time. They were scattered into the wind in foster homes. And then if you read Michael Oher's book, he loves his siblings. He makes that crystal clear. And so you enter into a conservatorship so you can provide him his needs without getting in NCAA trouble. You can make some medical decisions for him while he's a kid and while he's in college. But you also enter into that conservatorship so that Michael Oher, if he comes into millions of dollars, can always tell these 11 siblings and his mama or his daddy, or when you got 11 siblings, you know how many cousins you have? When you got 11 siblings by 7, 8, 9 different daddies, you know how many cousins you have? You know how many wannabe grandparents and friends and, that's Tutu's best friend. You know how many people you have begging you for money? And do you know what a luxury it would be to be able to tell people, man, my conservators, they're in charge of my money, man. I would hook you up, dog. But you got to get it from the Tuohys. The Tuohys were, in my view, a heat shield for Michael Oher to keep people up off his money. any young person coming from his background. This man, all the way through up until his sophomore year of high school, he basically was completely uneducated. Completely. And so at age 15, he has no training, no life skills training, no education. And so at age 15, and then so at age 22, just 7 years later, he might come into NFL millions as a first-round draft pick. And so someone agreed to leave that conservatorship in place so that Michael Oher can tell anybody that asks, hey, dog, you got to get from the Tuohys. I got a conservatorship. That's all they were doing. That's what this is about. Anybody with any common sense, anybody with any life experience, anybody that's ever had money knows what this is about. I'm 56, and I've had what most people would consider a lot of money for 25 years. And I'm a bit of a butthole. I don't find it hard to say no. But I've given away so much money out of generosity, out of guilt, out of just, why not? Just because, you know, what do they call it? Survivor's remorse? Can you imagine how much survivor's remorse Michael Oher has? He's got 11 siblings. They all grew up completely neglected by a crack-addicted mother and fathers who most of them did not know. This is according to Michael Oher's own writings. He felt lucky that he met his father, even though he had no relationship with his father. He felt lucky because the majority of his siblings had no idea who their father was. And so, and I don't know what happened, because I would imagine that, you know, the way Michael Oher writes about his brothers and sisters and his love for them, I'm sure he helped them out as best he could. But the conservatorship was a favor that they left in place so that Michael Oher could tell siblings, mama, girlfriend, baby mama, hey, the Tuohys are my conservators. I don't make those decisions. And the reason I say that is everybody's right, oh, they're in charge of his money. Michael Oher has made no allegation that the Tuohys stopped him from doing anything. He hasn't made, oh, they wouldn't let me buy a car, or, oh, they wouldn't let me do this, they wouldn't let me do that. This was a deal that was put in place so they could support him when he was at Ole Miss. And then after that, once he got into the NFL, he was free to do whatever he wanted, but they left the conservatorship in place, not because they were controlling him, because they were giving him an out, an excuse to tell people no. If it was something more than that, Michael Oher would have made that allegation. Man, I had a chance to invest in a business in Chick-fil-A before it was a big deal, and the Tuohys stopped me. He hasn't said that. What he's complained about is, man, I should have got more money off this movie. They owe me for this movie. The movie was all about me. And he's complaining that the money has been split 5 different ways, and he feels like it shouldn't be split 5 different ways. That movie was about me. I should have benefited more than anybody. And as I've already explained, that movie was not solely about him. Life is not solely about him. His own life isn't solely about him. It's about all the people that have either helped, harmed, or done nothing to him. It's about all the people he engaged with. And there's a long list of people who helped Michael Oher, who participated in their story. Michael Oher's real complaint here is that why they cutting this check 5 ways? It was my story. The 80% of that money should have came to me, and then the Tuohys should have cut the rest up. They're already rich. They didn't need that money. And so what the Tuohys are thinking is like, Michael's going to earn $20, $30 million in the NFL. You know, that's more money than our kids. And even though we're going to sell this fast food franchise for $200 million and, you know, maybe 70 million of that is profit, who knows? But hey, that's more money than our kids are likely to earn. And this isn't a whole lot of money in the first place. Even if Michael had taken all the money, it's still probably less than $1 million if you accept Michael Lewis's explanation and if you have any understanding of how Hollywood works. And these media companies should know how and should be able to explain how Hollywood works. There was no major deal for Michael Oher to cut in 2003, 4, 5, 6, whenever the book was being written, whenever the movie was being made. He was never in a position to cut some major deal to get a big percentage of the money off that movie. Fox wouldn't make the movie because they didn't believe in, oh, we can't get Julia Roberts, we don't want to do the movie. The Tuohys' next door neighbor had to finance the movie, some small production company. And you think they're going to cut Michael Oher some huge deal? They cut everybody in a little tiny percentage if it makes movie. There's no guarantee these movies are going to make $300 million. It's a huge risk. The number one principle in the entertainment industry, whoever antes up the most capital, this is entertainment industry or just in business. You may have a great idea, but whoever finances that great idea is going to make more money than you with your great idea. Big bank takes little bank. Always. That's true in every industry. The person that cuts the check eats first and eats the most. They get the big piece of the chicken. And we're sitting around, the media's lying to Michael Oher, social media's lying to Michael. Oh yeah, they took advantage of you. They should have cut you a better deal on that movie. The movie's all about you. I know it was their friend who wrote the book. I know it was their next door neighbor who financed the movie. I know it was their connections that even allowed for your story to be told on a massive scale. But Mike, it's all you, baby. You didn't benefit from their privilege. They benefited from you, Mike. When they took you into their home, when they bought you clothes to wear, when they bought you a car to drive, when they paid for some woman to go to Ole Miss and live at Ole Miss for all 4 years you were there and tutor you through every class you ever took, that was all you, Mike. You were doing them a favor by allowing that tutor to do your work and to get you up to speed. Your mama and daddy neglected you, and you came to them at 15, 16 in this Briarcrest school, unable to even talk. Go read The Blind Side. Go read the book. They had to teach Michael Oher how to shake hands. He had no idea how to shake hands. They had to show him. I'm not talking about the Tuohys, I'm talking about the people at the school. Michael Oher walked around, would not talk to anybody, kept his head down, wouldn't answer questions, didn't know how to engage with people. I'm not trying to take a dump on Michael Oher. I'm trying to explain to you the ramifications of the level of neglect that he experienced as a child from his mother, from his grandmother, from the neglect of his father, from just growing up with 11 siblings and no direction. He didn't even know how to shake hands. He mumbled. These are facts. And Michael Oher's running around, oh, God, they portrayed me as dumb. And I'm looking at people in the media, now they want to cancel Michael Lewis. I want to not take a break, but I want to show you this tweet from Don Vanatta and play you the clip because now everybody's going after Don Vanatta. They're going after Michael Lewis because he's doing interviews that aren't promoting the agenda and is telling the truth. And so now everybody's after Michael Lewis. He's the bad guy. And so Don Vanatta, ESPN's investigative reporter, do we have that tweet? Tweeted. Michael Lewis is asked simply to give an update on Michael Oher while he was at Ole Miss. Lewis opens by saying with a smirk, he's on the dean's list at Ole Miss, which says a lot about the dean's list at Ole Miss. And then Don Vanatta says, it goes downhill from there. This is ESPN's top investigative journalist framing up what you're about to see from Michael Lewis. Play the clip.
Inside before we open it up to questions, I think I and everyone who reads this book comes away from it wondering what happens to Michael. One of the first things I did after I read it was go on Google and look him up. Can you give us an update on how he's doing academically?
If you Google him now, I Google him now. He's on the dean's list at Ole Miss, which says a lot about the dean's list at Ole Miss. But you know what? In fairness to Michael, Bear Bryant had that funny line. The former coach of Alabama Crimson Tide once said to a reporter, "We want to have a school that makes the football team proud, or that the football team can be proud of." A lot of these schools sort of have inverted their purpose in life. That there are schools like Ole Miss, but Ole Miss is not even the best example, that seem to exist mainly so that they can sustain a football team. And they then take these kids, many of whom are from the underclass, poor black kids from ghettos around America, and let them into the school, get them in however they can get them in, and then they create a track for them inside the school. And the track is not designed for them to get an education or even to actually engage with the school outside of the football team in any way. It's designed to keep their grade point average to the level where they can continue to play football. And if you watch the serious football schools, Florida State's probably the best, on TV, they're always selling you the idea, of course, the NCAA, they're always selling you that this is actually a school behind this football team. And so they show you pictures of the school on TV, and sometimes they'll flash up the players, they'll even list what their majors are. They shouldn't do this because it's too much of a clue. But if they do, when they do this, and it's criminal justice or sociology, or sometimes it makes you shudder, journalism, each school has its major for the football team. They're all, for Virginia Tech, they're all sociology majors. In Florida State, they're all criminal justice majors. They fell on the track, and it's one program. At Ole Miss, it is indeed criminal justice. And all the poor black football players are majoring in criminal justice. And great tribute to Michael is that he has actually got engaged with his studies. And he quit the criminal justice program 6 months ago and announced that because he was such a good writer, he was going to embark on a journalism career after he finished playing in the NFL. So he went into what is actually a fairly legitimate journalism program there, which is far more taxing than the criminal justice program. So he's actually taking courses alongside ordinary students, which is more than can be said for most of the football players.
So who would listen to that and say it goes downhill from there? What did Michael Lewis say that was so super negative about Michael Oher? He ends it by saying, hey, Michael Oher, to his credit, he's left criminal justice and moved into journalism because he wants to actually challenge himself and wants to do what ordinary students are doing. He actually complimented Michael Oher. But that's not how, again, Don Vannatta's a decorator. I think Don Vannatta's won a Pulitzer Prize. He works for ESPN. He's their top investigative journalist. When I say the media is corrupt and evil and determined to drive us apart, I know many people in the audience get it, understand it, but there are some people that are still in total denial. And the reason I say that is because I'm constantly having to tell friends of mine who constantly bring me, hey, this is what the media said about X, Y, and Z. And I've told them for years, don't believe anything you read. It's a manipulation. It's all and one of my best friends, intelligent guy, business owner, great guy, texted me this week about Michael Oher and the conservatorship and, all the stuff he had read and, believed all. And I had hey, man, how many times I got to say, don't believe anything they say. It's just not true. It's manipulated. It's done to emotionally trigger you. And so this is what I'm talking about. Don Vannatta has framed up a video that Michael Lewis is giving an interview talking about the book years ago, where he says something honest and accurate about the criminal justice programs at many college football universities or what colleges do in steering their athletes into majors that, don't have a lot of value, or they have professors in place who will take care of the athletes. It's factual. And for him to crack a joke about Michael Oher being on the dean's list does say something about Ole Miss and all these schools. Because go read the book. Don't take, and Michael Oher and everybody's complaining. I want to skip down to, I think it's number 9. I numbered it number 9. It's from the New York Times. It's from Santul Nurkar for the New York Times. And he's written a story about how, what is it? Let me get the blindside lawsuit shows strains in depiction of black athletes. Michael Oher has long criticized the feel-good Hollywood version of his life as a struggling high school football player. His lawsuit against the family took him in questions their relationship. And so Santul Nurkar, whoever this guy is, yesterday writes, for many viewers, the movie's depiction, like many dramatized Hollywood stories that stretch the truth and go beyond the creative controls of the subjects, what is my computer doing? Subjects, embodied a familiar trope of black athletes like Oher being more physically than mentally gifted and needing white people like Leanne Tuohy to help them along the way. The Leanne Tuohy character plays the white savior trope to a T, said Jeffrey Montez, a professor of sociology at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs, who has researched the intersection of sports and pop culture. What did I tell you about these theoretical professors, know-nothings, that live in this world of theory and love to be quoted and presented as experts, talking about something they know nothing about? and they're talking about it in theory. And so the media is constantly driving us into the matrix, into a lack of reality, into fantasy world and fantasy land. And so for many viewers, the movie's depiction, like many dramatized Hollywood stories that stretch the truth and go beyond the creative controls of subjects, embodied a familiar trope of black athletes like Michael Oher being more physically than mentally gifted. Here's what they're arguing. There are no ramifications for the destruction of the black family. There are no ramifications for 75% of black kids growing up in single-parent homes. There are no ramifications for Michael Oher spending the first 15 years of his life raising himself without consistent parenting or development from adults. There's no ramifications for him. Dude, in the book, The Blind Side, they report on his academic records and failings and repeating first grade. I think he ended up repeating another grade, and how he was just pushed along and given D's even though he didn't earn them, even though he wasn't in school. At some point, I think in ninth grade, he went to some high school where they said he missed 50 some odd days of school. And at the private school he transferred into, if you missed 15 days in any class, you were given a failing grade no matter what you did. This dude missed, I think, 56 days of school, according to his academic record. And at this Briarcrest, had he missed 15 days in any particular class, he would have gotten a failing grade. He showed up to Briarcrest with a 0.6 GPA. That's a direct ramification of the trauma that this man experienced his first 15 years of life. He wasn't developed or raised or educated in any proper fashion. And the New York Times and this idiot writing in the New York Times and corporate media want black people in the world to believe, hey, it doesn't matter how a child grows up. They're going to be mentally gifted, and you know what? Yeah, 75% of black kids and a lot of these black athletes come from dysfunctional homes. Not as bad as Michael Oher's, but come from dysfunctional homes and environments. And there's no academic repercussions from that. There are no emotional repercussions from that. There are no intellectual repercussions from that. That's a trope. These kids that grow up raising themselves don't know whether mom and daddy are going to be home, locked up out of their house, begging for food on the streets, begging for couches to sleep on. No ramifications for that. They're perfectly fine. And it's a trope. If anybody says or puts out a movie that points to like, oh man, if all these wealthy people, if all these Christian people, if all these people from nuclear family situations, and many of them happen to be white, if they hadn't helped, Michael Oher would have figured all this out on his own. That's a trope that, Christian white people, or that the people depicted in this particular movie, that's a trope. That's not a reflection of reality. And that's a lie. That's an out and out lie. There are repercussions for the destruction of family. And the people on the front lines of that destruction of family have paid the highest cost, and that is black Americans. It's not a trope. I meant to look this. I got this use of trope to dismiss truth It's maddening. It drives me crazy. Who came up with this? I need the etymology on trope. And now I'm just looking at any literary or rhetorical device as a metaphor, an irony that consists in the use of words and other than literal. A phrase, sentence, or verse formally interloped into. I can't. I'm as bad as Michael Oher. I can't, and I'm a writer. What the hell is it? Embellishes to amplify or Stop it. It's not a trope, it's the truth. Michael Oher showed up and needed the Tuohys and whoever else to help him out and to get him up to speed. They're just, they want us to exist in a false world. What does the Bible say? What does common sense tell you about the truth? The truth sets you free. When you deny someone the truth, you're killing them. And this denial of truth is killing America. This is why the media is the enemy of the American people. They're denying us truth. They're killing us with lies and omissions. And it's so clear as day. And needing white people like Leanne Tuohy to help them along the way. No, he doesn't need a white person like Leanne Tuohy. He needs a person to help him along the way. You know who he would have preferred that person be? Mama. I think her name's Dee Dee. Mama, daddy. They don't even know who the daddy is. It may be some dude named Mike Williams, I think, I'm sorry. We haven't identified, but I think his name's Mike Williams or whatever. Yeah, Michael Oher met him a couple of times. That's who he would have loved to have helped him along the way, mama and daddy. And now we're going to demonize the people who did help him along the way because they're the wrong color and have the wrong religious beliefs. Leanne Tuohy character plays the white savior trope to a T. Some clown in Colorado, some professor in Colorado has the audacity to let that type of stupidity fall out of his mouth. Are you kidding me? And they're quoting him as if he has something important to say. I'm going to go to number 10 here on Santul Nakar, whatever his name is. The Blind Side traded in many ways on the stereotype vision of the, let's say, lost and helpless black athlete and was able to succeed in part because the story was so familiar, said Kevin Walston, a professor of political science at California State University, Long Beach, who has researched the connection between racial resentment and opposition towards paying college athletes. This is a clown on a college campus talking about something he knows nothing about. Quoted in the New York Times. Traded in many ways on the stereotype vision of, let's say, lost and helpless black athletes. There are many lost and helpless black athletes because the family has been destroyed in the black community. They don't want you to deal with that because they want you to think the matriarchal single black mother is doing an outstanding, fantastic job. And if she could just get racism out of the way, Michael Oher would be a Rhodes Scholar. He'd be on the dean's list at every school he ever attended. It doesn't matter that Michael Oher's mama was strung out on crack and left him abandoned in the home. This professor knows nothing about the ramifications of that. What he can tell you about is microaggressions from white people. and white people wondering, hey, what's black people's hair feel like? He can tell you about all the ramifications of that and how damaging all that is. And oh my God, someone drove by in a car and called a black person the N-word. Everybody knows every ramification of that. That just destroys young black men and girls. Oh my God, someone called them the N-word and it wasn't a black rapper. Their life is ruined. They'll never recover. These professors can tell you every ramification of that, but they have nothing to say when mama and daddy don't do their job and a kid is left to rot in the world, don't know where his next meal's coming from, can't get inside of his house, rags to wear, no one helping him with schoolwork, no one asking him to do schoolwork. Oh, we don't know what the ramifications. We got nothing to say about that. Joe Biden and all these, the biggest threat to America are alleged white nationalists, the Oath Keepers, Proud Boys. The biggest threat to America is this evil, demonic, wicked media system we've constructed that tells constant lies. Lies intended to destroy. Lies intended to make you believe that destroying the family has no ramifications. They're denying you the truth in order to not hurt your feelings. Last one from Santul Nakar. A 1993 paper, this is number 12, a 1993 paper published in the Sociology of Sports Journal found that college students thought black student athletes were less intelligent, received worse grades, and were not academically prepared to attend college compared to white athletes. Oh, how dare they? How dare white students think that? Because black students think the same thing. The numbers, SAT scores, GPA scores, dropout rate in college, academic probation, flunking out. Black athletes do that more than white athletes. Those are facts. And they're a ramification of the destruction of the family. People ask me all the time, like, or people question me, like, what are you doing? You're pointing out things, and it comes off like you're critical of black people and you know the positions you take. You don't criticize this person or that person. What I'm doing is showing you worldview is more important than skin color. Skin color has no real value at all. And so what I'm doing is showing you that culture and worldview and values determine outcomes, not skin color. I have a set of values that were implanted in me from my parents, from my grandparents, from 25th Street Baptist Church, that have served me well. Have I followed all of them to a T? Absolutely not. And we talk about it all the time on this show. But my skin color has not determined my worldview or level of success. It's been my values and the culture that I've adopted. And so what I try to do on this show is showcase a set of values and a worldview that reminds everybody, this isn't about skin color. Not all people with my particular hue or level of melanin believe all of the garbage spewed out by leftists. It's people have accepted the programming and they've made a mistake. People haven't opened their eyes to the fact that this corporate media system that they loved, oh, it's racist, but they believe every word that comes out of corporate media. They believe every word that comes out of social media. We've lost the ability to think critically and to think for ourselves. But not all of us. And I'm trying to wake up people. Quit thinking that way. Quit thinking that Leanne and Sean Tuohy are your enemies. They're Christians. Any modicum of investigation into them and their history, because I'm just double checking what I already knew, but just confirming, like before. And again, you got to remember, The Blind Side came out in 2006. I think Twitter started around 2006. And sounds like I'm making too much of Twitter, but I'm not. Twitter is one of the strongest things that has dumbed down the media and has dumbed down human communication and human understanding of how humans engage with each other. And so this book was written before social media had overtaken us and dumbed us down to the point and reprogrammed us to see everything in this racial context. And so if you go read The Blind Side, you'll find Sean Tuohy, a devout Christian. Sean Tuohy, long before he was involved with Michael Oher, had made it a point to involve himself with any black student that came into that Briarcrest school, and particularly any black athlete, because he was a former athlete. He befriended them. Michael Oher couldn't eat when he was a junior or a sophomore year, and he couldn't eat at lunchtime because he had no money. And every school he had ever gone to before then, they provided free lunch for kids like him. But at this private school, they didn't provide free lunch because no one needed it. And so without telling him, Sean Tuohy paid for Michael Tuohy to eat as much as he wanted at the school. This is before he moved in. And he had done this for other black kids at the school who weren't going to be first-round NFL draft picks. He did it because he's a Christian, and not because he's a white Christian. He did it because he's a Christian, and those were his values. And then he discipled his wife, the girl he met in college, into his worldview and beliefs and away from her father's worldviews and beliefs that were very racist. And these are the people we want to destroy? These are the people we want to demonize? This is who the media is telling all these out-of-context stories about? To demonize these people? These are your enemies. These are the people that don't want you helped, that don't want us to come together and live in any type of harmony. I think there's a couple, you know what? Don't I have something to do here with Samaritan? No? Oh, it's tomorrow? Okay. Well, I want to get a couple more of these excerpts in that I may have skipped over. Teresa Vargas, Metro columnist for the Washington Post. She wrote a piece in the Washington Post. Let me get the title of this correct. The most troubling part of Michael Oher's conservatorship. It's another clown. Metro columnist for the Washington Post. Let's go to number 6. This is early in Teresa Vargas's piece. In recent days, Oher's case has ignited impassioned conversations across the country about conservatorship, just as Britney Spears' contentious conservatorship did a few years ago. She goes on to say some other stuff about some dude named Jonathan Martinez has long been trying to get people to pay attention to the issue. A decade ago, he made me pay attention to it. Now, Britney Spears' parents had a conservatorship over their daughter. Who clearly has some mental issues. This Michael Oher thing is not the same thing. And the media knows it. This conservatorship, it was left in place because no one had ever paid any attention to it after it was put in place when the dude was going off to college and justified the Tuohys spending money on him. And so people just forgot it. It's like it's no different than GoDaddy just ripped me off for $700. They auto-renewed something that I didn't want auto-renewed because I forgot about it. Same thing with this conservatorship. Put in place to justify, hey, we can give Michael all the support we want while he's at Ole Miss. It won't violate NCAA rules. We got to have some sort of legal guardianship. And then it was forgotten about. And that's why Sean Tuohy said, hey, we'll end that right away. No problem. We've never paid attention to it in the first place. We've never used it to exercise any control over Michael in the first place. We used or work with our friend Michael Lewis on his book. Our next door neighbor financed the movie The Blind Side. And we cut a deal thinking, hey, The Blind Side may make $10 million like most movies, or $20 million or what, may break even, may lose money. And so we cut a deal reflective of that. And Mike's going off to the NFL and he's going to make millions. You know, Michael Lewis and all these NFL scouts are saying, this guy's headed to riches. You know, who cares? If he makes a couple $100,000 on this movie or $1 million off this movie, who cares? He's going to make so much money, have such a long, great NFL career. And this is typical of the deals everybody gets in Hollywood. Michael Lewis didn't get rich off of it. The Tuohys didn't get rich off of it. And Michael Oher is not getting rich off of it. But we want to pretend like Michael Oher is special. We won't go ask anybody else who's ever had a movie made about them, did you get rich off of it? Did you make millions of dollars off of it? The media won't ask anybody that because they know the answer. And they want to play along with the gimmick of like, oh God, this black kid is getting so ripped off. It's unconscionable what the Tuohys have done. How could they let him sign that contract? Teresa Vargas. 5 years ago, Morgan K. Whitlatch was the legal director for Quality Trust for Individuals with Disabilities and represented an 87-year-old woman who became the first senior citizen in D.C. to convince a court to terminate a guardianship placed on her in favor of supported decision-making. Here's this Whitlatch being quoted, Morgan K. Whitlatch. I am deeply troubled by Mr. Oher's case. While I do not know the details outside his petition to terminate his conservatorship and the limited court filings available online, his allegations certainly highlight some of the very problems with guardianship and conservatorship systems that disability rights advocates have been pointing to for years. The man just said, I don't know nothing about it, but let me quote him anyway. And Washington Post and Teresa Vargas don't clean up that none of this is analogous to some person with disabilities. It's a piece of paper put in place to justify supporting the man when he was a college athlete. It was forgotten about. It was never used. No one ever took control of his medical issues. No one ever took control of his NFL money because the Tuohys didn't need it and they were happy for him. Just lies, 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 and more lies. How long are we going to tolerate this or put up with it? How many instances of things like this do we have to see before people are finally ready, just like ignore the media, understand the game that's being run on you, wake up, really be woke. The media is our enemy. And I don't care what channel, I don't care what network, I don't care whether they pretend to be conservative or they're liberal or whatever. It's the media. They're dishonest. There's a reason why Fox News fired Tucker Carlson, because they didn't want to be that close to the truth. They want lightweights talking on television and people who don't go anywhere near the real truth. This isn't a right or left wing thing. This is just an assault on truth by all of the media. I think the last thing I want to say, because I made notes here to myself, and whoever the people that are sitting out here, and I think I've already made this point, but I just want to hammer it, and we'll be done. But the people that think Michael Oher is not getting enough credit, and that how dare they write a book that shows white people helping a black person. How dare they? That's a trope. How dare they do that? Someone tweeted at me that about, he didn't need their help. He was going to be a first-round draft pick. And basically, he could have done it all himself. And I'm just like, what world are you living in? Whose understanding of life, what worldview have you adopted? First of all, if you have any type of faith-based worldview, you know that we accomplish nothing without help. We accomplish nothing without God. But let's for this moment put God to the side. Just, do you have an understanding of life? Like, and maybe I don't hope I'm not repeating myself, but my career in journalism, I was a lot like Michael Oher when I graduated from Ball State University. I was relatively smart, but I liked to socialize, and I was a bit of a jack-off. And so I had a lot of catching up to do when I graduated from college as a journalist. And so no newspaper would give me a job. Graduated college with a 2.3. I hadn't done any internships because I played football and had to prepare for football during the off season. I hadn't taken school all that seriously until my last year of school. Wrote for the student paper for a year. Wasn't that skilled, wasn't that good. Nobody would give me a full-time job. A guy named Bob Zaltzberg, white, Jewish man in Bloomington, Indiana, was impressed with how passionate I was about wanting to do a journalism career and how persistent I was. And so he invited me to Bloomington for an interview. And I, impressed him in the interview. And he's like, and he told me flat out, like, dude, yeah, like your energy, like your passion, but you're not qualified for a full-time job here, not even an entry-level full-time job. The best we can do is offer you $5 an hour as a part-time employee. And so he gave me a break, $5 an hour job as a part-time employee. I'm the first college graduate that went off to school in my family. And my first job out of college is $5 an hour, thanks to Bob Zaltzberg. Thank you so much, Bob Zaltzberg. So when I get to Bloomington and start this job, I'm not very good. First article I wrote was probably 600 words, and the sports editor was a guy named Bob Hamill, white guy, very celebrated writer in the state of Indiana. He was Bob Knight's best friend, worked for the Bloomington Herald-Times. He covered Indiana basketball and made a lot of his reputation writing about Bobby Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers. Celebrated it. He's in the Indiana Sports Writing Hall of Fame, deservedly so. He took the first article I wrote and marked it up in red, all the mistakes that I made. And let's say if it was 600 words, 300 of those words were a mistake. There was more red ink on this piece of paper than there was black ink. And he said, like, whew, Jason, man, you got a lot of work to do. You know, you're gonna have to put in a lot of effort to get up to speed. And he asked a guy named Andy Graham, white guy, red hair. Hey, Andy, would you work with Jason in your spare time and try to get Jason up to speed? And Andy said he would, and Andy did. And Andy worked with me primarily. And then Lynn Hauser, another white guy, he would help me out a little bit. Then Rex Kurtz, another white guy, he would help me out a little bit. Bob Hamill would help me out a little bit. And then I worked my tail off. And Bob Hamill was quoted years later and talking about me when I had gone to other newspapers and become high profile and more known than any of the guys in Bloomington and just a national. He would be quoted saying, like, holy cow, Jason really impressed me. When I thought that Jason had a chance is when I told him to read some old James Kilpatrick columns about writing. And he said he remembered telling me that, and I remember him telling me that. And let's say he told me that at 7 p.m., and Bob Hamill was a workaholic. And so Bob Hamill left work at 2 a.m. He was the last person out of the building, except for me. When he was leaving the building, he saw me in a little office with the light on, reading back issues of James Kilpatrick. And he said, oh, that's when I thought Whitlock might have a chance. And so I could go on and tell you about, because I was there for about a year. Those guys helped me out tremendously, got me up to a level where I actually was qualified for an entry-level job at the Charlotte Observer, and what at this time a bureau in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Job paid $400 a week. It's a full-time job, very entry-level, and it was covering Little League and high school sports. And people there. And these are people, I got along great with the people in Bloomington. People in Charlotte, you know, I was a bit of a handful because, you know, I was very determined, but good Lord, did they help me. A guy named Bill O'Connor basically took my writing from entry level to skilled, and he did it in 3 months. And he was a brutal editor. He was very hard, but white guy named Bill O'Connor taught me really, really how to write. White woman named Ann Allen assisted him in that. White woman named Trish Green assisted him in that. Black dude named Bill Chapman assisted him in that. White woman named Lolo Pendergrass. All kinds of people helped me along the way. And I'm so thankful. And I couldn't imagine. And I could go through other examples of people that helped me in my career and helped me in other facets of life. And guy named Damon Furbrush, great friend to me. as a child, and just as opportunities to show me the world and things that his son was a high school teammate of mine. And just Damon showed me things through me being friends with his son, and both of his sons, actually. Because his oldest son is actually the one that talked me into being a journalist, Sean. But I could go down a whole list of just people that just, for no reason other than God, offered me help along the way. And I just couldn't imagine how you get in Michael Oher's mindset that I did this, I'm not getting enough credit for it, the Tuohys cut me a bad deal, I'm owed this, and then to have all these people over social media and in the mainstream media saying, yeah, you did it all, and they exploited you, and they knew, and it was, I don't understand. I just don't get it. I don't understand the lack of gratitude, the sense of entitlement, the bitterness. Now, the difference between me and Michael Oher is I was never abandoned by my parents. And when I think about the people that helped me the most, it would be Joyce and Jimmy Whitlock, my brother James, my sister Yolanda. And so, that's the difference. And so when I look at the Michael Oher deal, and anybody in the media that has a brain, isn't retarded, isn't in on some scam to divide us, should look at Michael Oher and say, whew, his mama and daddy did some damage to him. And he doesn't know how to love anybody. He doesn't know how to express and show gratitude towards anybody because his parents never loved him, never demonstrated, never modeled to him the importance of gratitude. I was reading in the Blindside book, because the Briarcrest School is a Christian school. And one of the observations they made very on is like, this dude's never held a Bible in his hand when he got there. And their whole school is based on a biblical worldview. And it was like, this dude's never held a Bible in his hand. And likely when they got a hold of him, couldn't read a Bible. And so I just don't understand how the media can look at someone who is so clearly damaged by neglect and bitterness and to think that, let's take his word on all of this. Let's portray his angle on all of this, and let's crucify and demonize the Tuohy family. Makes no sense. And it's done to drive us apart, and that's why the media is our greatest enemy. We'll play tomorrow. We'll see you tomorrow.
Nothing in life like freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'll break my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free.